Hey guys, welcome back to your Top Cut matches here. I'm Regina Angley now. This is still Brendan.
I'm still here, same spot. Let's do it again.
Let's go for another mirror. Do you enjoy casting those?
I love mirrors. I think they're really interesting, honestly, because when you have the same Pokemon, it comes down to, you know, what are your techs and how good are you? And that's what it comes down to when you play a mirror like that. And I think a lot of times you're like, it's the same Pokemon. But I think there are some really interesting dynamics, and I hope that we'll get the chance to talk about them here. We did feature both these players on stream yesterday.
Yep. So
I believe they both won their win and int in round 8, right? They were both.
Oh, they were both our round 8 matches.
In our round 8 match, and here they are meeting as the 4 and 5 seed in top 8. So really exciting matchup, and both running a restricted combination that really was not necessarily on the radar in advance of this tournament with that Xerneas Yveltal combo.
Yeah, and so for you guys on the stream, obviously Preston Gadling and Josh Mecham, my bad, sorry. So obviously we did see their teams yesterday, like you said, and they're actually on the screen for you guys soon. But I'm actually interested to see, like you said, that Yveltal, how they're going to be having, because you can have the same restricted on there, but different ways that you can train, different items that you have for them. But definitely quick lock in there. So, you know, we've got just them going right in there. I mean,
yeah, they're ready
for your
to
top
go.
cut.
And you do see this sometimes, especially in top 8 matches when these players have had, you know, 12 plus hours to prepare for this matchup if they really want to. So at least for their game ones, they kind of have an idea of what kind of strategy they want to use, as these players are going to send their Pokemon out onto the field for our turn 1.
And we've got an Incineroar and Xerneas lead here from Josh, and Tapu Fini and Incineroar from Preston as well. So the Incineroar's out on the field for the Fake Out Pressure and for the Intimidate, which isn't going to matter on the Pokemon next to them. Xerneas is Fairy Aura going first. Then we've got the Misty Terrain, and now a chance to see which Incineroar is going to get their Intimidate out first, which is actually going to be a Preston's side. Oh, sorry, Josh's side, with Preston's Incineroar going last.
Well, Regina, you never know when Xerneas is running close combat, so we don't know whether or not this Incineroar Intimidates matter. That is, you know, really fiery tech. But both players are going to have game plans that you could kind of necessarily revolve around Incineroar over the course of this matchup, because it is one of those Pokemon that handles the opposing restricted combination of Xerneas Yveltal very well. It can sit there and take attacks from Yveltal all day, and if Xerneas does not have a Geomancy boost, it can sit there and take attacks from Xerneas very well. So in much the same way as Xerneas and Lunala, Incineroar is a great Pokemon into this restricted combination.
And we've got that Xerneas having had that Protect as the Fake Out from Preston's Incineroar goes into that. Tapu Fini going for a haze, so showing that.
Okay.
So Josh not falling for that Geomancy setup as Preston reveals that tech immediately. That U-turn, though, from Josh's side is going to go into the Incineroar and Preston's, going to allow Josh a way to probably get rid of this Tapu Fini, because that is going to be a problem for him. That haze is going to stop him from ever setting up Geomancy.
Right, and really good turn from Josh here, especially in response to that haze coming out, and is, like you said, Regina, able to get Kartana onto the field, which does threaten a big knockout onto Tapu Fini, and threatens a lot of damage onto Incineroar too, because it has not had the opportunity to switch in and intimidate it yet. And with that U-turn chip, depending on what item this Kartana is running, there is maybe an outside chance of being able to just knock Incineroar out. Really, really nice turn from Josh, who was able to really respond from an all-in to an all-in play from Preston.
And Preston got to save that Intimidate for later. He brings in that Yveltal in place of that Incineroar. That Tapu Fini is going to sit there and, you know, be afraid of that Kartana. But Kartana instead going for Sacred Sword into what was that Incineroar. That Yveltal taking it very nicely. Dazzling Gleam, though, going into both of these Pokemon. So catches in that Yveltal as well. But it takes that so nicely. Tapu Fini going for the Icy Wind gets a little bit of speed control to hopefully help out Preston's side of the field later on.
Yep, and that Icy Wind will allow Yveltal and Tapu Fini to be potentially faster than both Pokemon on the opposing side of the field, which would allow Yveltal the opportunity to go for a Snarl here, which would allow it to potentially actually knock out Kartana because of how weak it is. And, you know, we saw how much damage just that Icy Wind from Tapu Fini did. A Snarl could do a lot of damage to Kartana and potentially knock it out in conjunction with something like a Nature's Madness. But actually, that Kartana would be going to be withdrawn from the field for that same reason. Yveltal is a scary Pokemon for Kartana.
Yeah, and Incineroar coming in place, like you said, for that. Kartana is going to get another Intimidate into this Tapu Fini. Still doesn't matter. This Tapu Fini is just going to be like, I'm going to click Haze and Icy Wind, and those Intimidates don't matter. We have the Foul Play now from that Yveltal going into what was that Kartana, so that Kartana definitely would have been knocked out.
This could be the turn to Geomancy here,
and,
Regina.
oh, we have a Heal Pulse, though, from that Tapu Fini, so going to heal up that Yveltal to back up to the green, which is going to be really nice. That Yveltal was a little bit bulky that we saw here. As Dazzling Gleam, though, once again from the Xerneas, I don't think Josh is ever going to feel comfortable pressing that Geomancy with that haze on the field.
Yeah, and the haze was, it will always be an option for him, but I thought that as Incineroar was coming onto the field, that would give him an opportunity to make a play where he gets that Geomancy up this turn, and then next turn can fake out Tapu Fini to prevent it from going for a haze and threaten offense that turn. But decides to just go for the safe Dazzling Gleam damage. He hasn't really been given a reason to not just continue to click attacks with Xerneas at this point, as we saw Tapu Fini not taking it super well. Yveltal actually taking it relatively well thanks to that Assault Vest item, but really, it can't continue to sit there and take them.
Yeah, and actually the Tapu Fini went before the Dazzling Gleam too, so you're right, he could have pressed haze at that point, but now Preston's taking back that Tapu Fini, going to send back in his own Incineroar, so both of these guys have fake out potential once more. Incineroar getting an Intimidate now, and to both of these Pokemon. It's a shame that Kartana's not on the field if you're Preston, because that would have been nice to be able to mitigate some of that damage there.
And this could be another good turn to Geomancy here, Reggie, and if he gets the Geomancy off, that could be the end of the game given his position right now.
Ooh, and that Incineroar going for the fake out into it was a Tapu Fini, as Snarl from Yveltal is going to make sure that that Geomancy is only going to give it a +1 if Josh decides to go for that this turn. That special attack drop is always really nice against Pokemon like that, but we get a Moonblast instead from that Xerneas, so both Dazzling Gleam and Moonblast on the Xerneas goes into that Yveltal, and it still takes it and still holds on. No heal plus potential though for next turn.
Right, and is able to hang on thanks to that Snarl, just barely keeping it alive in the face of that Moonblast. And it seems like, I keep talking about, where you can Geomancy, but Josh seems very content to just continue and sit there and click attack. Xerneas isn't really being threatened by anything that Preston has on the field right now, so you know what, Josh thinks, I'll just keep on laying down that damage. He's going to cycle out that Snarl boost for now, though, and is able to get his Amoonguss onto the field.
And Amoonguss is actually, I think, a really cool Pokemon to have out here because it's going to take some attacks really nicely. As Foul Play goes back into that Incineroar, doesn't do a lot of damage here, and U-turn from Josh is going to allow him to pivot back into a Pokemon. So we have seen all 4 of his Pokemon now. So now it's just a matter of what he wants to send back out here. That Kartana could be really nice. It won't be intimidated as well. And Amoonguss next to Xerneas is always a nice combination.
Right, and I really like his decision not to bring Yveltal in this matchup. I think sometimes it feels weird to leave one of your restricted Pokemon alone because of how strong they are. They've got all those stats, but it really just doesn't fare super well into Tapu Fini, Incineroar, and an opposing Yveltal. So instead, he takes the opportunity to just bring Kartana instead, which does do well against that combination of Pokemon. And now Xerneas is back on the field. There is no potential for haze. Misty Terrain is not on the field with the Amoonguss next to Xerneas, so this could be a chance for Geomancy to go up. He might have to take a Snarl for it, but maybe just a Dazzling Gleam to knock out Yveltal.
Yeah, and the Dazzling Gleam would be nice too because Tapu Fini is probably going to be coming back in now to bring back up that trade against that Amoonguss.
There it is.
So yeah, there is that Tapu Fini back in place of that Yveltal. So we will be getting that Mystery Train once more. So Amoonguss won't be able to spore anything. And, if you're Josh, I think you're kind of understanding that. So that Amoonguss is actually going to leave. And I think we might be getting that Kartana. Oh, Incineroar back. So now we've got that fake out on Josh's side. Gets the Intimidate as well into the Incineroar on Preston's side. But I think you're right. You can definitely get rid of that Tapu Fini now or that Incineroar with the Xerneas.
And there's the Geomancy. And Tapu Fini does take the field here, but it's not going to be able to do anything before Xerneas has the opportunity to knock it out with a Moonblast. And this feels like Josh is just a couple steps ahead here at this point. Preston is making a lot of switches to try and find a position where he can start to, threaten damage onto Josh's side of the field. But so far, it's been all Josh. He's been one step ahead. And this position for Preston, while he is going to get that U-turn off and be able to pivot a little bit, he allowed a Geomancy for free, which is something that you absolutely never want to do in this format. And he also allowed a Geomancy for free in a situation where he has a 15 HP Yveltal waiting in the back. So this could be the Xerneas show as we go from mid-game to end-game here in Game 1.
Yeah, and you're right. And the problem here is that Tapu Fini is going to be able to be faked out now. And just
I'm sorry, 14 HP.
14. You were 1 off. Oh, my goodness. But that Dazzling Gleam, like you said, is going to be able to take out the Yveltal, and you can fake out that Tapu Fini now. And you're not going to be able to stop that haze because you're now faster than Tapu Fini as well. And so I think Josh, you're right. He kind of understood correctly. Like, Tapu Fini is going to be a problem, so let's get ourselves in a position where we can do this better.
Tapu Fini is going to leave the field to get Incineroar back in, but this is just continuing to just kind of cycle through positions where Xerneas is taking advantage of the way you're playing here. And Incineroar is on the field. Maybe fake out pressure next turn, but there hasn't really been a counterattack launched against this Xerneas yet. It's just kind of like defensive positioning for not a whole lot.
Yeah, and that fake out is going to go into that Incineroar, which was that Tapu Fini, but that Dazzling Gleam, like we had mentioned, is going to be able to take out that Yveltal. That Incineroar obviously not taking it very comfortably, but it's still a really tough game for Preston because that Tapu Fini won't be able to take a Moonblast. It's not going to be as fast. It's not going to be fast enough to stop that. So, I mean, he gets the health back with his Incineroar, but it's still going to be a tough battle for Preston.
Right, and this position here is not terrible for Preston if he has his Xerneas in the back because he just got his Incineroar on. He has that fake out pressure, so it would give him the opportunity to go for a fake out onto Xerneas, followed by a Geomancy, at which point we get to play a fun game called Whose Xerneas is Faster, when they all have their boosts. So this is finally the position that Preston was maybe looking for early in the game, where he was just earlier kind of, just rotating through those other three Pokemon, the Xerneas, the Incineroar, the Tapu Fini, and the Yveltal. And now finally he's got his Fake Out plus Xerneas, this really good and influential combination of Incineroar and Xerneas, and maybe now the counterattack begins.
Yep, and so we've got that Fake Out into Josh's own Xerneas as Preston chooses that moment to go for that Geomancy. And this isn't really that bad of an endgame for Preston, down to these Pokemon. He is able to set up just immediately because, he doesn't have to worry about pressing his own Haze anymore. I mean, Josh still has that Kartana in the back,
and a Moongus, which could be the big one.
So it's still going to be an okay, I think Josh is still in an okay spot here. That U-turn from that Incineroar now going into Preston's own Incineroar. And, he's in a spot where he's able to kind of either bring in that Amoonguss for the Rage Powder, or he can bring in that Kartana, go for the Sacred Swords. I think the problem is if Josh's Kartana has that Sass, then it's been broken already as well.
So he does opt to go in for a Amoonguss, which I think is definitely the right play here, and does give him the opportunity to do a number of things. He can go for a Clear Smog onto Xerneas. He can cycle it back out and go immediately back into Incineroar to reset that Fake Out pressure, which I think is probably the way to go. And then we get to play that, who is supporting Xerneas better kind of endgame. And with a Amoonguss on the field, I think that really gives the edge to Josh here.
Yeah, I mean, especially, like, Preston still has that Tapu Fini in the back, but I don't think it's ever really going to be in a safe spot. He is going to decide to bring it in here, though, so I don't know if it'll be able to take either a Moonblast. It'll probably be able to take a Dazzling Gleam, but not a Moonblast from a Geomancy Xerneas. So we do have Preston protecting his own Xerneas, and the Xerneas on Josh's side going for the Moonblast into what is now that Tapu Fini. Does not manage to hold on, is knocked out, and we're going to have that Incineroar back in. And like you said, that Clear Smog from the Amoonguss, obviously Preston protecting his own Xerneas now. Right,
and the Incineroar is going to retake the field here as Preston's last Pokemon, and he will have Fake Out pressure for a turn, but I don't think there's anything that's stopping Josh from either just going for a double protect here and keeping that Amoonguss on the field, or protecting his own Xerneas and then just going back into Incineroar. That's he has a couple of plays available to him thanks to having all four of his Pokemon remaining. Kartana definitely not factoring into this end game so much, but he does have that option to go with this big Xerneas, support the Xerneas core with the Amoonguss and the Incineroar, and continue to just kind of play around that. You can bring Incineroar out and then cycle that back into Xerneas, and without some fancy footwork by Preston, there's not really a great way to punish it here at this stage in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because he's got the Xerneas at full health at Geomancy, but I think it feels a little bit too late for him for when he decided to set up. Like you said, that Amoonguss is going to go back to Josh. We are going to get that Incineroar on the field. So playing that game of Intimidate cycling where, you can get that Fake Out pressure, stop the Xerneas the next turn, etc. And it's a little tough for Preston, I think, to come back from that, especially because, Josh has all four of his Pokemon still, and that's a really nice, comfortable position to be in. That Xerneas is protecting on Josh's side against that potential Fake Out here, but we do have a Dazzling Gleam. Just, I think, trying to get any damage out on the field.
All right, and I think potentially Preston had a way back in if he was able to call that Incineroar switch in and tag it with the Moonblast, but instead Incineroar is going to just take that Dazzling Gleam. He's going to eat his berry and not have too much of a problem, but he calls it with a low kick, not going to do quite enough because of that Intimidate that comes out, and I believe that Incineroar not being that heavy, so I believe it's an 80 base power move if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. Please don't quote me on that. But now the positioning, maybe Preston had it for a turn. He had a slim opening where he could maybe work his way back in by knocking out that slot, but instead Incineroar gets the Fake Out pressure back. Now all he has to do is Fake Out Xerneas, Moonblast the Incineroar, and then he's free to just get his Amoonguss back onto the field whenever and win the game.
I mean, there you go. You just completely called that turn, and that's exactly what just happened on the field. You let Moonblast into the Incineroar, the Fake Out into the Xerneas, and now Preston has this Xerneas that's taken, literally the only damage it's taken so far has been Fake Out, but it can't do anything, and we see the forfeit screen up here. And I think that is a really hard matchup for Preston to kind of figure out. I mean, I think that's part of the issue with mirrors is that you understand how your opponent should play and how you should play. But I really like, you had mentioned this, that Josh had left behind that Yveltal. And I think that Kartana was a nice sort of pivot point for him. Like we only saw it once and it had taken damage, but I think it was enough to kind of threaten pressure onto Preston where he was like, I don't want to lose anything to this Kartana, and give it that beast boost. Definitely,
and it almost seems like Kartana is just kind of an afterthought in this bring from Josh's team, because I think he feels very comfortably in going with that Xerneas, Incineroar, Amoonguss combination, and he was really able to get so much work done over the course of the game with just Incineroar, Xerneas, and Amoonguss was kind of an afterthought. It was one of those things where, you know, I could have it on the field, and that would definitely, you know, change the options that you have available with your own Xerneas. But Kartana, you know, more of an afterthought, and maybe just kind of like, you know, maybe if Xerneas goes down, I have ways to threaten offense in the end game, but it's kind of definitely like option number 4 as far as his brings. These players lock in really quickly. One thing I do expect to see in this game is Preston to try and bring his own Amoonguss, because I think Tapu Fini really accomplished absolutely nothing for him, and we might try to see something like an early game Yveltal to lay Snarls down a lot earlier to prevent him from having to do just kind of like a constant shuffle of Pokemon and just continuously take damage from Xerneas like he did in game 1.
Yeah, that was really tough, I think, to have that Yveltal go down so fast, because it's such a good Pokemon to have stick around. So Xerneas and Incineroar, actually both of them are leading Xerneas and Incineroar out on the field. So I guess a quote-unquote true mirror here, as the Pokemon are also in the same position. So we are going to be having that Xerneas on Josh's side, Radiate or first potentially, and then the Incineroar and the Xerneas on Josh's side both going to be faster than Preston's.
Yep, so definitely something that matters here. I'm not really sure if you really want to try and fake out Incineroar in this scenario. I think it would be much safer to just kind of trade onto Xerneas. But this lead from Preston definitely makes me think that he probably has a Amoonguss in the back, because if you want to kind of go all in on your own Xerneas game plan, you better have a good way to respond to the opponent's Xerneas game plan, right? So that would give him something to kind of switch into later in the game if this Xerneas is allowed to get its Geomancy up. But we're going to kind of pod race again here, Regina. I think I used that phrase on screen yesterday here. But when all the Geomancers, when all the Geomancies are up, when everybody Geomancies, nobody does.
Oh my gosh. And so we do have that Incineroar for the fake out on Josh's side, stopping the Xerneas on Preston's side, but the Incineroar on Preston's side goes for the Incineroar, hoping to win that speed tie, did not, and that now Josh was free to set up that Geomancy. The face that Brendan is making right now is...
I was pretty sure that we'd seen
the
Intimidate from Josh's Incineroar go first in both games, right? So that was definitely a bold play to make, and Incineroar is one of those Pokemon. It's not like Xerneas where everybody runs timid, and you can like reasonably expect that you're in a Xerneas speed tie, right? Incineroars run all different kinds of speeds to do different things. Some of them are slow, so you get the slower U-turn. Some of them are fast, so you get the faster fake out. We saw that Intimidate twice, and Preston decided to just, you know, maybe it's a speed tie. That's a tough call to try and make.
Yeah, and so that Xerneas is protecting, obviously, against Josh's own Geomancy one, and Josh is taking this time to be able to pivot, goes for the U-turn into Preston's Incineroar, is going to be able to bring out something here to kind of just deal damage, and, you know, he is in such a good spot right now, having set up very nicely, very freely. Brings in the Kartana, and Kartana is such a good Pokemon to have against this. Not intimidated, has the Sacred Sword, has the Leaf Blade, has all these attacks against, you know, Xerneas and Incineroar, and we get another U-turn now from Preston, but I feel like he is going to have to try so hard to catch up now that he's not been able to, like, press that Geomancy or not stop Josh's.
Yeah, and a really great pivot, I think, from Josh there, because I was kind of like, I was kind of saying early in the game that, you know, you have to have your Amoonguss somewhere in the back in case that Xerneas, it's like your contingency plan for Geomancy going up and something going wrong, and Josh actually responds very effectively to that by getting Kartana onto the field, which cannot be redirected by that Rage Powder. So he's got a very easy, you know, offensive position to try and exploit right now, where he could just double target Amoonguss and knock it out, or he could just go straight into that Xerneas. And if he double target Amoonguss here, this could just be the end of the game.
Yeah, and so that Xerneas, because it has some Geomancy, you have more freedom to be able to switch it out. We do get that Incineroar back in here, gets an Intimidate now onto that Kartana, which is very important because that'll change the damage output now. Also gets that fake out pressure. No Rage Powder though, as the Moonblast from Xerneas goes into what is now the Incineroar. Is gonna, barely misses the knockout and allows to get that health back, so it's still gonna be here for that fake out next turn. That Smart Strike doubling up into, going into that Amoonguss, and he's gonna try, The Spore, though, doesn't go into the Kartana. Was expecting probably a switch out. That is a rough call for Preston. I mean, that is he's just been targeting the spot consistently to not his benefit.
That was, really tough. Kind of a tough turn for both players there, actually. I think both of them flew a little bit too close to the sun, with Preston trying to get back into the game by, trying to catch that Incineroar switch in, which I think was, pretty reasonable to expect. But then Josh on the other side of the field, where he has this really difficult offense, or a strong offensive position, and instead of trying to double target into one slot, he kind of splits his damage for just chip onto Amoonguss, whereas he could have been trying to pick up a knockout onto one slot.
And Xerneas protecting itself against that fake out. A smart strike from Kartana is going to go into that Amoonguss again. I think both of them are trying to catch a Pokemon on the switch in here. Clear Smog, though, being revealed now on Preston's own Amoonguss. That Xerneas protecting itself very nicely against the double down from both of Preston's Pokemon, leaving Kartana free to just go for damage.
Yep, and now this is a great position for Josh. If he didn't have a good offensive position 2 turns ago, he definitely does now, because he's got a free kind of like Moonblast into Amoonguss and Sacred Sword into Incineroar to take 2 knockouts. And it looks like Tapu Fini has been selected as the sacrificial lamb at this point in the game. And if that is a Moonblast into that slot, it is definitely not going to enjoy taking that too much.
We've got a Dazzling Gleam, though, now from Josh's Xerneas, which is nice because at least you can cover both Pokemon here. You do get the knockout on that Incineroar, which is also going to be really nice for Josh. The Smart Strike once again now into this Tapu Fini. It's a tough spot for Preston. I mean, like, that Tapu Fini is going to be able to eat its berry, but he has constantly been on the back pedal since that Xerneas wasn't able to Geomancy, and since Josh's was able to get that Geomancy.
Yep, and it's just, you're totally right, Regina. He's been pretty much unable to recover from it at this point. It was a free Geomancy. It's been Geomancied for, what, 4 or 5 turns now, and hasn't even taken damage yet. So the only thing that Preston really has going for him at this point was he was able to recover 33% of Shroomis's, Amoonguss. I've been playing Go a lot. Amoonguss's HP by activating that Regenerator ability, which will give him a little bit of room to at least try and operate a tiny bit. But with the Misty Terrain that he just set up, he doesn't have that sleep pressure, and he's really have to hope he gets some opportunity to go for a Clear Smog here.
And I mean, here's the nice thing, though, because at least that Xerneas manages to get enough damage on it. Kartana's able to pick up that free Beast Boost. It's still at like full health. Now you've got a +1 here on this Kartana. No threat of an Incineroar. The Clear Smog goes off, yeah, but the problem with that now is this Kartana is now a scary threat because it's got that +1. You've got that Xerneas in the back. It's going to go down to a Smart Strike. Can't be redirected from that Rage Powder, and it's just, Josh has been like, yeah, you can Clear Smog me, but this Kartana now is your bigger threat, and you can't do anything to stop it.
Right, yeah, there's really just, with Amoonguss being wholly unable to really do anything to Kartana unless it has some wacky techs like Foul Play or Hidden Power Fire, it's going to be able to just go for a Smart Strike into this Xerneas slot. And now that those Geomancy boosts are down on Xerneas, you feel pretty comfortable about switching it out for Incineroar if that, happens to be the play that you want to make. But no, it's going to be a Smart Strike into the Amoonguss, and it looks like he's just going to go for the KO there and deal with Xerneas at another time. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing, though. You have that +2 on that Kartana. If you go for the attack, like, why not? I mean, this Xerneas here is going to go for the Dazzling Gleam. It's going to be single target. I think Moonblast even there would have been just perfectly fine. But, I mean, gets a double critical hit. Yeah. And, Preston goes for the Geomancy. And I think that critical hit also, I don't know if it would have mattered in the end because the Smart Strike from Kartana.
Yeah, I think it would have been close based on some of the damage that we'd seen it do. But a Dazzling Gleam, it would have eventually knocked it out with the Dazzling Gleam plus the Smart Strike. But Geomancy does go up only 6 or 7 turns late here, so he does have an offensive position for the first time this game. So that's he
tried his best and got there in the end.
We're looking at positives here, but unfortunately he needs Moonblast to knock out both of these Pokemon at this point. A Dazzling Gleam just really won't be enough, and of course Incineroar and likely Amoonguss are still in the back. So it's just a really difficult position.
Yeah, I mean, Josh showing that the tact as well. I mean, correctly protecting his Kartana against that Xerneas, and leaving Josh's own Xerneas free to go against that Xerneas, even without that boost. It's an easy knockout right there. That was just tough. That first turn decided so much from the get-go. Those fake out exchanges mattered so much. I mean, we usually see a dead turn between an Incineroar Xerneas mirror where both of them fake out the Xerneas, and to see that happen where we had seen game 1, like you said, that Intimidate from Josh's own Incineroar was first, and Preston not really I don't know if he missed or was expecting that speed tie. That was really rough to see.
Yeah, there were a lot of ways that he could have played that turn 1, and that was not one of them.
That was probably the worst case scenario right there.
And really, the game was it was pretty much over from that point, right? And of course, Josh was making some nice plays, correctly calling targets with his Kartana Xerneas combination, and really just you know, when you don't have a way to respond to it, you don't have your own Xerneas to at least, you know, kind of threaten something in return, it's difficult to respond to. And he did, you know, some defensive switching, was able to kind of mitigate the damage at some point, but he was never able to generate his own offensive position. And when you're not threatening knockouts, you can't really
do anything.
win games of Pokemon. So definitely a difficult way to go out in top 8, but of course Josh played that very, very cleanly.
That Kartana was such an MVP.
He knew the matchup very well and knew exactly what he wanted to do and executed his game plan, you know, to perfection.
Yeah, and we'll get a little bit more from Josh here in just a second as we bring him backstage. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be having your next top 8 match. It's actually going to be your 1st and 8th seed. So Megan and Brandon. After there's a lot of Brandons and Brandons running around
I'm sorry.
here. It's okay. But we will be having an interview and then that next top 8 match. So don't go anywhere.